Good evening, everyone. I'm Silvia Terol, and I will be presenting the topic using translation and interpretation in ELT, which is part of the book panel series, Teaching English in Global Context, book edited by Valentina Canese and Susan Spesini. A long-standing debate is whether all bilinguals are translators and interpreters. Another debate is whether translation and interpretation, or TNI, activities should take place in language classrooms. This chapter acknowledges these debates by identifying three levels of TNI, by exploring the separation between TNI and ELT, or English language teaching, and it offers a few TNI activities for ELT classes in order to enhance language acquisition rather than to train professional translators and interpreters. As part of the first debate, many authors claim that the ability for doing TNI does not develop automatically just by knowing or speaking two languages. Others state that although TNI might occur naturally in second language acquisition, it should be treated as the fifth skill alongside reading, writing, listening, and speaking. They contend that when TNI is mastered, this strengthens the other language skills. Now, we know for a fact that bilinguals, including children and language learners, naturally transfer daily life meaning from one language to another, almost unconsciously and usually in an oral way. However, when wanting to become TNI professionals, many bilinguals fail the entrance examination to TNI programs, which shows that bilinguals don't automatically possess the skill to become translators and interpreters. As for the second debate, with the adoption of communicative teaching approaches in the 1990s, the use of the native language for instructional support started to disappear from ELT classes, which ended up in the exclusion of TNI activities from English language teaching or foreign language teaching. In this chapter, TNI activities have been divided into three distinct levels: natural, pedagogic, sometimes also called school translation by some authors, and professional TNI. Now, natural TNI is performed naturally by social individuals who have not studied TNI and who can be at varying stages of L2 learning if they are language learners. In general, they will be good at transmitting the main idea of emails, menus, or all types of texts, but not in a professional way or at a working level. Sometimes there's a little bit of bilingual interference, which wouldn't represent a big problem because of the context this is done. On another hand, pedagogic TNI is performed by proficient bilinguals who have maybe taken one or two courses to do TNI at their workplaces, or that maybe have a lot of experience and a very good mastery of both their native language or in their foreign language. At this stage, bilingual interference could be problematic. Now, if bilinguals end up doing TNI, why are such activities not included in ELT curricula? Some reasons might be the demographic distribution of English learners and maybe also the economic role played by English in the ELT publishing industry. However, TNI or the represents a set of such comprehensive activities that if they were included in ELT as the fifth skill, like some authors pose or propose, better said, Learners would not only be able to expand their proficiency, but also to perform TNI within and beyond natural contexts. The third level is that of professional TNI, which has a completely different type of training and from pedagogic TNI, and it has completely different objectives and methods. And we're not addressing professional TNI in this chapter. Now, as for the pedagogical applications, in ELT classrooms, pedagogic TNI activities support communicative and cultural approaches. For translation, which implies written texts, it's always important to identify a pathway for an effective translation process, similar to that takes place when writing an essay, for example. When choosing the text that will hopefully match your goals as a teacher, you always have to keep in mind the students' proficiency levels and their interests, because they will not be having a good time if they have to translate something they're not interested in. You could organize activities to be performed individually, in pairs, or in small groups. And subtitling, which is part of audiovisual translation, is always fun to do and students always like it. And there are lots of free software available to do it. For interpretation, which includes or implies, better said, listening and speaking, you can start by listening to a very short recording in L2 and then have volunteers interpret consecutively into L1. And consecutively means listening first and then stopping and then doing the interpretation. Simultaneously, we'll be doing it at the same time, and that happens only at the professional level. You can also have students prepare engage short presentations in L1 and then have peers interpret into L2 or vice versa, depending on their proficiency level and how comfortable or challenged they feel to go from L1 into L2 or from L2 into L1. You can do this on a regular basis, for example, to conclude each thematic unit and have something like interpreting day at the end of each unit. For both translation and interpretation, it's always good to include a feedback activity at the end, because this will help your students gain confidence and become more comfortable with speaking up their minds and with receiving critique. In this chapter, the most important concepts to remember are the definitions of the 3 levels of translation: natural TNI, pedagogic TNI, and professional TNI. And remember that at this stage, practice makes perfect. In the discussing and taking action section, you will be able to find some triggering questions to discuss the role of TNI in foreign language acquisition, and some questions about how much perceptions on translation and interpretation change after reading this chapter. There's also a brief to-do list to practice TNI in your class. And something you have to remember is that you can always include pedagogic TNI activities in your class, and that will not only be highly beneficial for your class, but also for the professional TNI community, because more people will know that speaking 2 or more languages does not mean you can be a professional translator and interpreter, and that it is a lot of work to become a professional. In the expanding further section, I share a few good resources for pedagogic TNI activities, and one of my favorites is TED, which is an endless source of short educational videos that you can use to do consecutive interpretation or to translate or subtitle. And lastly, there is extensive material you can read about TNI. This is about a selected list of reference that I used to write this chapter, and you can see the whole list in the book. I hope you will enjoy reading this the full chapter, and I appreciate your attention. And now we go to questions and answers if you have any questions. Thank you.